All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another USA Technologies webinar, and thanks for joining us. I'm Adrian Austin, Product Marketing Manager here at USAT, and today we'll be talking about micromarkets, and particularly how can markets at even small locations and accounts really be made profitable. Now, before we get started, I wanted to provide some basic guidance for the webinar today. You'll notice on the right side of your screen, you'll see a Go to Meetings questions box. So here you can list any questions that you have for our speakers today, and at the end, we'll take time to answer through as many of the questions as we can. We'll be answering or collecting the questions throughout the whole presentation, so feel free to post the questions at any time. So today, the webinar is being presented by Ben Mills from USAT. Our special guest host today is Michael Johnson, joining us from Yoke Payments, as well as our special customer guest today, Mike Cascione Jr. from Group C, CC Vending. So big thanks for all three of you for joining us today. Now, just for, so we don't have any confusion, because we are going to have two mics on the call today, we're going to be referring Michael Johnson from Yoke as MJ and Mike Cascione from CC Vending as MC. Now, why don't we start off with a little bit of introductions for all of our presenters. So Ben Mills is our strategic account manager here at USA Technologies. Ben actually began, just like myself, at Cantaloupe in 2017 before the acquisition by USAT. He has a degree in economics and political science from Fordham University. Now, Ben's current role has expanded out a little bit more into sales and device management, customer relations, and leading the USAT device upgrade program. But Ben does not like sweets, as he said he is sweet enough. And his favorite vending snack is Cheez-Its. Ben, thanks for hosting with us today.
Thanks for having me, Adrian.
Now, Mike Cascione Jr. earned his bachelor's degree in finance and marketing. Out of college, Mike started as a route jumper for CC Vending, moving up quickly to the role of route manager. To date, Michael is now operations manager and partner, and has been running the operation with his twin brother Anthony for the past 12 years, building Group C, CC Vending, to become one of the largest independent vending companies on the East Coast, in addition to starting other multiple rapidly growing startup companies. MC, thanks for joining us here.
Thanks a lot.
Now, last but not least, Mike was the CEO and co-founder of Yoke Payments. He was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and graduated from the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University with a BS in business management. And after building multiple successful organizations, he has proved himself as a strong leader and motivator. Michael is referred to internally as the VP of Happiness. We put that as his title here as well, because we really liked it, because he takes a genuine interest in those around him and understands really how to keep teams excited while driving both business and personal growth. MJ, thanks really appreciate you coming and presenting with us today.
Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Now, I also want to give a quick overview of MC's company, Group C and CC Vending. Now, CC Vending was founded in the late 80s in Mount Vernon, New York. Group C currently operates with over 120 employees, 75 routes servicing both vending and micromarket locations, 15,000 vending machines, and over 100 micromarket locations, which is a number that they're growing constantly and currently and all the time. All right, so with that, I'm going to give a quick overview of what we'll be talking today, and then I'll stop talking and I'll hand it over to Ben to really start covering any topics. So what we're going to be doing is starting to first go over, why we think we're seeing a growing popularity with micromarkets throughout the unattended retail industry. Then Ben will jump into some of the challenges that operators we are seeing can run into when setting up or continuing to manage and operate markets. From there, we'll dive into some of the good stuff, which are the tips to continuing to boost revenue from top-line sales, as well as how to increase profits from cutting costs. At the end, we'll wrap up with a quick recap of some key takeaways from the presentation, and then open the floor up to some Q&A. Now, with that, I'll hand it over to Ben as soon as I give him control of the slides here to take it away and start the presentation.
Thank you, Adrian. So as Adrian stated, we're going to focus on this webinar on really what's the big deal about micro markets, followed by challenges we have specifically for smaller micro markets and how companies like Yoke with Group C have been able to overcome them. First, we're going to really look into what's the big deal about micro markets and why micro markets. So the first two things customers really look at when they start looking at micro markets and the advantages of them is going to be the higher revenue than vending as well as the higher transaction value. MC, I know you've dealt with us a lot over the years coming from the vending space into the micro market space. So can you give us a quick overview of what drew you to micro markets, specifically in the transactional and revenue value of it? What do you guys see your average ticket item as from a micro market compared to vending?
Yes, so it was a no-brainer once I partnered up with what it's been now 12 years with Cantaloupe, and recently the past year I partnered up with Yoke. It was a no-brainer for us to kind of transition for all limited access locations to smaller markets, or even in this case larger markets that we tend to. But the cost per, I mean, the average ticket price for a cart we see in the vending world, everybody can say it's around $2 or $1.75, but building a cart, what we've seen is people and customers have been checking out with around $5 to $6 for each transaction, which I think that's massive. To grow the industry and to really take advantage of that limited access space, right? We never really knew what percentage of employees were purchasing at a limited access location. And now we actually have the capability of speaking to them on a direct level.
That's really good. And how are you guys able to analyze this data when you're first putting out a micro market? How have you been able to compare it to your vending over the years and since you've launched the markets?
Well, you know what? Group C is fully integrated with Cantaloupe on every level. So with the quick reports for Cantaloupe, the same thing with vending. After a month of us installing a 50 employee location, a 200 employee location, we analyze that data every single month. If it's with Cantaloupe, directly with the analytics and understanding what's moving and what's not moving, but also with the Yoke backend portal. Like I said before, if there's 50 people in a location and we sign up 48 people on the app, we can cross-reference that with the Yoke portal to really understand who's signing up and who's not signing up, and actually go back to those locations and sign up those 2 extra people on the app. But with the analytics, it's the same thing as vending. I mean, we definitely like to, you know what, all the technology is great that Cantaloupe gives us and Yoke gives us, but if we're not looking at the data on a monthly basis, then shame on us, right? So we've actually hired 2 employees that all they do every day and all day is re-merchandise locations, because it's because we can put out, for every 1 micro market, we can put out 10 smaller retail markets. It's really important for us to keep being innovative with different products being announced at each location, so the customer walks into their limited access location like they're walking into a Dwayne Reed. They're always excited to see new products every time they walk in. So we feel that's very important for us.
That's great. So you're able to utilize both the USAT seed data platform as well as Yoke's backend, both
Absolutely.
for customer acquisition as well as data analytics for both.
Right. Absolutely.
So pivoting away from the data and software aspect of it, you mentioned that you set these up in secure access locations. After you've found the location, another big deal that we've noticed from customers is the less mechanical failures for a micro market location compared to vending. Can you kind of relay some information and past anecdotes that you've had after moving to micro markets from heavy vending?
Absolutely. Look, we have 200 plus operators on this phone call today. Everybody knows on this phone call that 99% when you send a route driver to a location to fix a machine, it's going to be because a wrinkled bill is stuck or a coin is stuck. And you're sending that technician out there, the gas, the labor, the parking money to go up to that 36th floor and fix a simple issue like that. It's been 6-7 months now that we put out 100 markets, and 400 more to go. Our goal is to get to 500 fairly quickly with the business that we have. But there's no repair calls. I mean, we have 100 markets out there. I think I've sent 1 or 2 technicians out because there was actually a power issue at the location that we just had to reset the iPad kiosk. We don't see any breakdowns. There's no technicians, right? Because we lose technicians in the market space, different technology positions opened up, and I'll explain more later on how those different jobs opened up because we don't need a salary as much for repairing vending machines. So the downtime there's pretty much no downtime.
That's great. And do you have any anecdotal evidence or stories about perhaps where you replaced a bank of vending machines with a micro market and just labor costs, approximately what it took, or issues you had with vending machines that you then replaced with a micro market?
Yeah, I mean, just to go over the cost, look, I mean, if you're trying to build really nice cabinetry around your market for 50 people, if it's a cooler and a rack, you could definitely do so if it's a high-end account, or you can just put an ambient rack and the cooler there. We see the cost almost 50% less for swapping out vending for markets. But for like a pure example that I always use is one of our locations in Jersey. They only have 60 people. We had a snack and a soda machine here, and it was doing around $60 a week, right? And the average ticket for when they bought products, like I said, was around $2. The sales went from $60 to around $118 a week for just. So we see the sales go up at least 50%, but in usual we see around 30 to 40% lift in sales.
So in that example, you almost doubled your sales while at the same time cutting down on any mechanical failures and technicians having to go service those 2 machines.
Absolutely. Our customers are a lot happier nowadays. There's no more chips getting stuck. Again, it's a limited access location, but look, it helped us retain the business, which is important. Putting limited access locations out there, markets, smaller retail markets, it increases the value of your company. So now you're more of a technology company than quote unquote that vending company. But the commission was 20% for vending, and now it's 0% for a market at that location because we're uplifting the culture and the environment for that location. And customers understand. I mean, they understand $20 commission. I mean, 20% commission when you're doing $60 a week is nothing. You might as well not get commission and give a better service to your employees, and that's what we've been finding a lot lately.
Great.
That a lot of locations are willing to drop the commission.
I think you brought up a great point there of retaining customers and just kind of harping on this point of less mechanical failures means there's less times of technicians visiting to go fix something on the machine, which keeps customer satisfaction up. So I think you really drove it home saying that you're able to retain more customers when you're converting machines over to micro markets.
And you know what, just to add it, like, yes, you can be one of those stereotypical vendors and put a $3,000 refurbished carousel food machine in there. Look, you don't have to sell fresh food at every limited access location. There's a lot of refrigerated items that have long-lasting shelf life that the customers look. You're not buying a a $3.50 Chobani yogurt from a carousel food machine. But you are going to open up that cooler, touch it, smell it, make sure that expiration date is good, and purchase the product. So from turning that vending space more into a retail space is what the customers really enjoy more than anything.
And that's a perfect segue into our next point. For one of the advantages of starting a micro market is your ability to sell higher ticket products within the market. So I think you just used a great example of carousel machines versus micro markets. But how have you been able to start selling higher ticket items in the micro markets compared to the vending space, and what successes have you seen for it?
Well, you know what I mean. Look, I mean, nobody wants to put $5 in a vending machine and purchase that expensive ticket item, right? But when you're using a mobile app, and what we do with Yoke is when we do rollouts, we preach the app only, right? Because the future, the digital couponing, push notifications that Yoke is coming out with, you want to get all the consumers on the app. But really pushing the app more than anything really allows us to sell larger ticket items. Consumers it doesn't look like they're thinking that much about price when they're purchasing on their app. But yeah, we see that price isn't really an issue anymore. Even if they're spending another 50 cents on a canned soda, they're really not questioning it. They're really not getting upset about it. They just purchase the product because of the new culture, right? So, but that leads to a lot of other scenarios that we're doing. And then we could talk about it later, and you can stop me short now, but having 100 markets out there, we have almost 4,500 customers on our app. And once you have 4,500 customers on your app, you can start dealing with the CPGs a lot more. You can deal with the brands a lot more. Look, my coolers are not Coke and Pepsi. They're all generic. I buy them brand new just because I don't want to be controlled by the big beverage companies. I want to control my own space. And we could talk about slotting later that we've been getting into, and it's bottom line. But
that's great. And yeah, we'll dive into the customer base later, but thank you for kind of sharing that anecdotal information about how the consumer spending habits and just consumer buying in general has moved to more app-based. So they're able to really purchase more based off using the app versus traditional vending. So with that said, we've gone over the benefits right now, and the really overarching question is, why don't we put them in every location? So really, why don't micro markets replace all vending machines? From here, see where some of the challenges will come up.
For sure. So that's what Group C's vision is. Look, we have 15,000 vending machines. It's a lot of vending machines. We can operate it smoothly with Cantaloupe. It's a very easy operation to run as long as the processes are in. But we believe every limited access location should be converted to a retail market. Hands down, no questions about it. That's why we're on the call today. It increases the value of your business. You retain business. You lower your commissions. You can start speaking to and communicating to your consumers directly as long as they're on the app. It's a totally different ballgame. You're turning yourself from a vending company into a retail monster. And that's the goal that Group C has.
That's great. And just going back to what you said, limited access location is really one of the largest challenges that we as an industry see for getting people into micro markets. So you really need a secure, limited access location that you can control who the customer is based on that to avoid shrinkage. So with that, MC, how do you guys choose your locations? How do you get a micro market into a place? What threshold do you have for either size or location or?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're really focusing on, because of all the customers we have a great opportunity to focus. We have a lot of corporate business, a lot of B&I business, right? So that's the first on the list to actually prioritize and go after. Anywhere from, look, the lowest I will go is around 40 people. But we're putting out Yoke markets if it's 40 people or the JP Morgan Chase Tech building, which you have 2,000 people on the floor. There's the limitation. There's pretty much no limitation since the costs are down, the cost of doing business is down. Look, I know a lot of the operators on this call are not fully integrated with Cantaloupe. They might be using 2 or 3 different VMSs, but we use all in. We're all in with Cantaloupe, so it definitely helps the process go a little smoother. But there's really no limit for where we actually choose to put a location. Yes, are we kind of turning down the warehouse settings right this second because there's so much opportunity with BNIs? Right now we are. Do we have, did Mike Johnson and Mike Cascione totally transform JP Morgan Chase's pantry service? I mean, their pantries from all vending to all markets in New York City, and they're growing across the East Coast. Yes, and there's more acceptance from BNIs and from corporate offices to actually transition to this model as well. But there's really no limit when it comes to limited access locations.
That's great. So the next challenge that we see is after you find that limited access location, which you've now kind of overcome, is physically getting that market set up in there, specifically in regards to network connectivity. MJ, could you give us a quick overview of how Yoke overcomes any network connectivity issues the end user may have at the micro market location or even using their mobile app?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the nicest things about our technology from the kiosk or terminal standpoint is that we're actually using an iPad. And iPads have slots for SIM cards. So if you want to save some money and you can get on the location's Wi-Fi, then go ahead and you can connect directly to their internet source. But a lot of our operator base is seeing a huge advantage to not having to deal with the location at all when it comes to connectivity and connecting directly to the cellular network. And then, you know, when they come in and change passwords, or you don't have to worry about firewalls and getting whitelisted, you're just removing that entire headache, but also it's also a hurdle to closing the deal. I wouldn't tell you how many times an operator has gone back and forth. It's extended the cycle of the sale by months because they can't come to an agreement on connectivity. Well, it's a lot easier when you walk into that meeting and say, yep, we don't even need to do anything on your networks. Forget about it. We don't touch anything that you guys are doing. We connect directly to the cell networks. So that's a huge, huge advantage, is being able to just remove that entire hurdle. And then on the phone app, same exact thing. You know, we're able, even if our terminal was down, which doesn't happen often, but if it does, you got all these people that are on the phone app that still have a way to buy. So you're never really down at one of our Yoke markets. There's always a way for somebody to add a product to the cart and make a purchase.
That's great. And just for our listeners on the webinar, can you clarify, are you guys carrier agnostic for the iPads for your kiosk system, or would they have to go with a specific network when they go install it?
No, it's 100% agnostic.
That's great. And as far as the mobile app, is that available in both iOS and Android, or is it one or the other?
It's both, iOS and Android.
That's great. So we see that as a challenge. Obviously, Yoke has come up with a great solution for how to get around any network connectivity issues by both providing a carrier agnostic iPad at the location, as well as having really the end user customer be able to use their phone as a kiosk if need be. So moving past that, another challenge that we hear from customers and end users is the cost to set up a market. MC, I know you've kind of spoken to that before. Can we just dive a little bit deeper? Is when you go to open a market, how often do you hear, well, I know this is going to look too fancy or cost too much, and how do you overcome that objection?
All right. I mean, again, it all goes back to reinvesting in your business. I mean, that's the most important key to this whole thing is you're reinvesting in your business and you're bringing more value to your business. Your business will be worth more by putting retail markets out there. Look, the startup cost, everybody likes to cut corners sometimes. Sometimes we have a 50 employee location. You want to put a refurbished snack machine in there and a Coke machine owned by Coke. You know what? Your investment is pretty much nothing. On the longevity of the account, you probably might lose it to me because I might go in there and pitch a Yoke market. So customer retention is really key to that. The setup costs for that scenario, again, that might be a little less expensive than putting cabinetry, the built-in rack or whatnot. But a lot of locations for the limited access locations for around 40, 50 people, we don't need to build cabinetry. So a $600 ambient rack and an $1,100 cooler, you're in the game. So the costs for that type of business, yeah, it might be the same as putting a refurbished snack machine and a soda machine, but you're going to increase your sales with a Yoke market. You're going to increase your sales. The cost of doing business, your bottom line, the cost of doing business goes down because, again, you're not sending technicians or anybody to that location. That location is more profitable because you probably turned it away from a commission base to a no commission base. So that's a scenario just comparing apples to apples if it was the same cost. Now, for JP Morgan Chase, yes, you got to take the good with the bad because you're opening 400 markets in all their locations in the tri-state area. We have a handful of locations where they have 50 to 60 people, and we have to build custom cabinetry that is fairly expensive. For a snack cooler, for a cooler and a rack, I would say it's around $1,200 for a Genesis or a Graphics at Pop. It might be a little more expensive for that scenario, but again, the value of your business goes up. But in general, for new business, a lot of the times, you're going to have to, for a prestige piece of business, you're going to have to, in a bank of machines, you're going to have to buy a Merchant 6. That's $5,000. If you want to sell food, you're going to have to put a refurbished carousel food machine that's going to cost you around $2,000. But I would say overall, it's definitely less. The cost of doing business is definitely less by putting a market from day one, and the longevity of the account is a lot more worth it.
That's great. MJ, you spoke to this earlier about having an iPad-based kiosk. Can you kind of give us some rationale on what your Yoke's thinking was to be iPad-centric and app-centric instead of going with a kiosk? And did that equate directly to the cost savings for the business operator that was going to go into it?
Yeah, to fully understand that choice, you got to go way back to 5 or 6 years ago when we were exposed to this micromarket concept, and we're literally trying to become micromarket operators ourselves. And we looked at the existing technology, and everybody was selling us a $15,000 jukebox kiosk. And it just didn't make sense. And we didn't come from the vending space, so I think it was a blessing. We kind of were able to approach this with, a blank slate, no preconceived notions, and said, look, if I was opening up a micromarket today, why do I even need a kiosk? That was where my brain was at. It's like, everybody's got a kiosk in their back pocket. This should be a smartphone app. I don't understand why we should be spending $15,000 on a piece of equipment when everybody's got that literally in their back pocket. Now, we may have been a little wet behind the ears and a little naive and didn't fully understand some of the issues that come with theft and not everybody wanting to download an app, but still that was the first place we went. And we actually scaled up to an iPad because the industry called for it, as opposed to, trying to scale down from a gargantuan kiosk to a smaller tabletop solution. So we actually went the other direction. But like I said, I think that was just because coming from outside of the industry, and we were also thinking, we're headquartered in Los Angeles, and yes, while there are a lot of 2,500 person factories, when I look out my window and see downtown LA, kind of like Mike C does in New York, I'm seeing a micro market on every floor of every building in a metropolitan area. And in order to do that, that $15,000 kiosk just wasn't going to cut it. And so when we just went to the drawing board, we said, what is the most intelligent way to do this? And from a technology standpoint, a lot of the development stuff, we were really excited about working with Apple as opposed to Android. Obviously, we do Android for the smartphone app, and there may be a day in the future where we also offer an Android version of our kiosk. It would still be tablet-based, but I think that was just when you approached it from a blank slate, that was what made sense to us with no preconceived notions.
That's great. So we appreciate that you guys saw a challenge that customers face and found a low-cost solution to remove the barrier for entry for it. So moving forward, after the customer you guys have overcome the customer objections for the high cost setup, connectivity, and you found a location. The next common challenge that we see in micro-market locations is operating and maintaining the market is expensive and time-consuming. Mike C., I think you'll have great insight into this as to how you've been able to overcome this in relation to driver, technician training, and then MJ, I think you could speak to customer onboarding a little bit, and we'll get into that later. But quickly, Mike C., can you just go over how you were able to get past the cost of operating and maintaining the markets when you were so vending-centric years ago?
Right. So we pretty much have the same mindset. With Cantaloupe, it's about where to go, when to go, and what to take, right? That's Cantaloupe and USAT's model. When it comes to route drivers, it was a seamless transition. The reason why is that right now, all our route drivers on vending routes use Seed Mobile. And when you go to a bank of vending machines, if there's 6 machines in a bank, 4 machines in a bank, you can schedule by asset. So if asset 136 in a market, that cooler was full and it only had a $9.86 restock, there's no reason for that driver to even open up that cooler, right? Let's get them in and out of the locations. So for management scheduling, when they schedule markets, they see the same thing as if they were scheduling vending. So for the manager's part, it was an easy transition. It was a seamless transition. It was a very painless transition. For vending route drivers, because we're transitioning accounts from a higher commission to lower commission, well, my drivers are on commission. So their commission gets to get bumped up a little bit. They get to get paid more. But the cost of doing business or the time it takes a route driver from the street level to go up to the floor, if they got to get their change bag ready for the CoinMax, if they got to get their money bags ready, they got to get their keys ready. When they get up to the vending machine, they have to fill their CoinMax. They have to make sure it's full. Half the time drivers don't even do that, or they forget to do it. Therefore, it runs out of nickels and your snack machine doesn't work correctly. The driver has to collect money, make his adjustments the same way if he was doing a market or not, his full inventories if he's doing a market or not. But open the machine, taking out the shelf, putting it back in. Every component of a route driver's day consists of headaches that they don't have to deal with in markets. So prime example, I have this route driver that's been with me for 5 years, Tony. Tony's probably one of my best route drivers. He does a lot of my JP Morgan Chase business for vending, or a lot of my corporate business. When I put a JP Morgan Chase building on his route and I took away a vending location from him, and I gave him a market route or a market location intertwined with his vending route, I didn't even have to train him. I said, look, this is not vending anymore. What you need to pay attention to is making your adjustments, making sure you document spoilage, making sure you document all this, because this is billed back to the client. When you get up there to the market, you basically got to think that you're walking into a little bodega, right? You're making sure the chips are straight. Presentation is huge. So they might be taking a little longer with presentation, but overall, they're not filling CoinMex. They don't have keys. It's just a simple, it's a simple operation transition for a route driver. The same way he sees a snack machine in his Seed mobile app is the same way he sees that snack rack. The planogram's set up exactly how it would be set up for a snack machine. So the concept of what they learned originally about making those adjustments when inventory is not pushed, the concept's still there, but the way they do the business is a lot easier and painless. So they move a lot quicker when it comes to markets. This one driver was like, hey, Mike, can you turn my whole entire route to markets? I was like, look, maybe the next couple of years we'll get your entire business to markets. But just going back to the route driver and his job, it was definitely seamless just putting a market on the route because it appears like it's a vending location when it comes to Seed Mobile.
So you're able to use the Seed software platform to really cross-train your drivers with really minimal interference because the software is created to treat vending and market routes very similar.
Correct, and that was a big decision we made going all in with Cantaloupe. With Cantaloupe and USAT, they keep getting strong partners like Yoke Payments. We believe in Yoke Payments, obviously, 100%. But USAT keeps integrating with those key technology companies, which allows a company like Group C to get stronger. So thank you for all. Thank you.
We appreciate that with you. So just moving ahead here, so now you've really showed us how it can be almost cost saving to move over to micro market because the ease of use for your employees is just so easy of a transition. One of the final challenges we hear, and really the point of this webinar, is people saying, I won't get enough revenue at my markets without a certain number of employees. Mike, I think you've kind of talked about it numerous times on this call today, but what do you guys use for a minimum threshold for customers when you're setting up a micro market? And what was the thought process behind that to have these smaller micro market locations?
Yeah, well, you know what? At the end of the day, just to fast forward really quick, the goal is to get every consumer to be on the app. Once you get the consumer on the app, then you kind of control your own destiny because then you have direct contact with that consumer. Enough revenue? Look, 40 people is our threshold. If we're doing $50, $60 a week, let's just pretend on the low, it's the same thing as vending. I mean, Seed Mobile allowed us to take on those small vending accounts when most vendors didn't want to. You can control the par. You can control. You have the remote control in your hand. You can control the route driver. You can control how much he fills and when he goes back to that location. So if there's one vending machine out there with only 30 people, most vendors will say, "Oh, I don't want that." For us, I kind of take that all day because I don't mind. As long as I have control with the analytics to understand when I have to go back, that location, I might go there once every 3 weeks and collect $120 because I have control over that limited access location. Our thought process was the same with retail markets, with Yoke, was things you can control with Seed Mobile, exactly what's getting pushed there, when they're going there, how much to fill. Those smaller locations become, especially for markets, a lot more profitable just because you're not sending technicians out. There's no, right? The cost savings on everything else justifies putting a smaller market where sometimes you wouldn't want to place one.
And with that, I think you go perfectly into our next slide. So really the cost savings. So how do I operate micro markets with fewer employees? And you've done a great job explaining both of these. You increase revenue. We've covered that by having higher ticket items, having a mobile wallet in which consumer spending habits have been able to change, and then also decrease costs. Decrease costs, you've gone over that you're able to integrate with the Seed software platform, so you don't have to have your drivers retrained for using anything. You're able to easily transition over low-cost micro markets and use the low-cost micro market solution in order to keep your cost down compared to an expensive kiosk and built-out shelving. So really, you've done a great job, Mike, so far, just showing how you can use this. With that, we'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that you can boost your top line. So you've kind of gone over this thus far, but let's hammer it a little bit more. Determining the right product mix. Mike, when we were discussing this before, you'd mentioned that you guys had partnered with some suppliers in order to push their product. So just give us a quick overview. How are you able to increase revenue by pushing the right product mix?
Look, I mean, everybody knows out there, you don't need analytics to understand it. In a lot of limited access locations, except for BNIs, people want healthy, right? So with the same analytics that comes with vending, without overcomplicating this, the data is what you need to understand what you need to place in these locations. Because we have so many vending machines and common sense putting healthy products out there, we like to have at least a 60-40 split. 60% market value products. I really don't like to call Doritos terribly unhealthy. Everybody wants their Dorito or their Snicker bar, but putting healthier items out there is very important for us. We see a huge, probably in the last 2 years, we see a huge change that consumers are willing to spend $2.55 or 50 cents on a Kind bar nowadays instead of $1.69 Snicker bar. But boosting your top line, besides figuring out the right product mix, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure there's another slide on it, but stop me. Because we own our own real estate, because we're not dictated by the big brands anymore, because we don't have Coke and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper Snapple machines out there, we get to control what we put into our coolers. There's a lot of new entrepreneurial companies coming out with different cold brews and kombucha teas and all this great stuff. It allows us to always do blast product changes. I mean, we do world product changes all the time in Cantaloupe, and instead of changing the label in the vending machine nowadays, all we're doing is replacing the product in Cantaloupe and changing the price and the updates in a matter of minutes, which allows us to really stay on top of each product mix at each location and always kind of put some fun into that location when the consumer goes back. But the slotting is where I believe getting everybody on the app and owning your own real estate allows us to dictate your own future. And the slotting fees are really helping us big time because we get to share these analytics with those companies. That really helps our bottom line.
That's great. So customer or companies are paying slotting fees directly to you in order to both promote their product, and you're able to give your customer base a more diverse product mix, which keeps them happy so they're not having the same monotony of the same products over and over.
Exactly, and that's what's important about owning your own real estate is, yeah, there's a lot of operators out there that use a Coke machine. They might sprinkle this, that, and the third in it, but being 100% transparent takes you a longer way. And that's why instead of dealing with the headache of getting Coke coolers and Pepsi coolers, owning your own coolers in the long run would be more beneficial to your company. Because you could do whatever you want with that real estate space.
So with that,
MJ's just going to jump in here real quick too and just talk about the difference between markets and vending here and why this has a direct impact on that 30 to 40% revenue boost just from switching to vending to markets. And I think MC would tell you, as he gives more love to those markets and continues to determine the right product mix, that's when that number gets up to the 100% and above increases. But from a psychological standpoint, somebody walks past the vending machine, that experience more often than not is like, okay, I've got $1 in my pocket. Like, what can I find that fits into that budget? Where when they walk into a micro market and they see this beautiful product mix, they're going to go up and grab the 3 products that they actually want and add them all to the cart and just pay with digital cash, which is They're going to buy what they want as opposed to what they've budgeted for the money that happens to be in their pocket at this moment in time.
That's a great example, MJ. Thank you for sharing that. So next up in boosting the top line, and MC, you've spoken to this about grand openings. So you said you'd hired a new employee to go help you guys with grand openings. Can you just give us a quick summary of when you guys finally go onto a location, how you're able to get customers to sign up, and then after that, we're going to have MJ give us some more information about the app. So just briefly, MC, go over what a grand opening looks like and what your follow-up with the customers are.
Yeah, so I mean, grand openings, like most operators on the call, they usually get procurement and HR involved. They get digital flyers. They send it out 2 or 3 days before your rollout. Everybody's educated on it, and then you're there with popcorn, giving away free popcorn and signing people up, right? So at that point, when that's all done and you're there doing the grand opening, look, you're only going to be there for 2 days or maybe even 3. But after 3, I just feel like having 2 people on site is just worthless. On grand openings, you're not going to capture every single employee. And the reason why I say capture is because what Mike Johnson said before, yes, we have an iPad. That's great. It's inexpensive. But when we do rollouts, we pretend the iPad doesn't even exist. We want to capture everybody on their phone because once they download the Yoke app, then they're embedded into our system. You have I would say you have that consumer locked down. So grand openings, if we can capture 30-40% of those consumers that are limited to actual location, that's great. But like I said before, because of your bottom line getting stronger and the cost of doing business is less with markets, technicians, blah 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 blah, you have other money. If jobs deteriorate because you don't need to fix a bill jam, then those jobs that deteriorate opening up new jobs, and those new jobs are usually technology jobs. So what we've done is, besides doing grand openings, it's important for us because of the cross-referencing, we're using the analytics on both Cantaloupe and USA Tech, Cantaloupe, and Yoke. Cross-referencing, if you know there's 200 people there and you signed up 150, well, guess what? There's 50 people more that you need on the app when you cross-reference this information. We signed up an employee, and all he does every day, all day, is cross-reference these locations that we put out and go blitz the locations that we need to sign up 50 more people. And the way I told this employee was, but he's pretty much on a route schedule. He goes around to all these locations all the time, signing up people over and over again. And the way I told him to think about it is, when you go back to 5 Manhattan West, JP Morgan Chase, 1,000 people on that floor, and you only got 800 signed up, every time you look at an employee, think about there's like a $5 bill just floating on his head. And once you sign him up, you just lock down $5 more. And every time you lock down another person, you keep locking up future consumers, right? That's how we got to almost 4,500 consumers on the app. And then just to kind of reiterate again, grand openings are great. Everybody obviously does it, but that's not, you need to go above and beyond, especially when you want to control your own destiny. And by doing that, getting people on the app, you need to go back to these locations and keep signing up more consumers and more consumers. That's what we found to be very successful for us.
And I think that's a great segue to what we're going to talk about in the next slide, and that's you're using your employees to leverage digital, which is provided by the Yoke app, in order to sign on new employees. So just moving to the next slide, I'm going to show all of these for time constraints. MJ, we'd really like you to talk to some of the ways that you guys had either developed your app or worked with MC to leverage the digital part of your app in order to help the customer boost their bottom line. So what I did is we talked about some of our talking points that we've discussed on previous calls. And MJ, if you can just go over your guys' rationale for utilizing digital and how you've seen some wins with it.
Big time. And to Mike's point about that $5 bill over their head, I think it's more like 500 because that's the lifetime value of that employee. I mean, like literally, when you get somebody on the app, you open up a direct line of communication with that person. And so now you've got the ability to push promos and actually do things to influence people at the point of decision as opposed to the point of sale. You're actually starting to drive consumer behavior by, pushing promos and deals and bundles and saves and all that stuff. But also, just think about this, like, obviously we would never as an operator want to lose an account, but contracts come to an end. Sometimes people put out RFPs and they're looking to see if there's anything else that's better out there. And in order to be replaced, if all somebody had to do was walk in and grab our iPad and take it off the wall and put in a new kiosk, like that's pretty easy to do. But when you've got thousands of employees that have an account on the app, and they've got loyalty and rewards programs, and they've got, they've earned points, and it's really hard to undo that. So I think it makes you really sticky with your locations. And that's kind of like a blunt force way to keep your customers. But there's another huge thing that we've seen have a tremendous impact. And because people have the app, and even at our kiosk, we have a support feature. And so it can range from anything, if you need help at the market, if there's a problem with the kiosk, if they want to make product suggestions. But long story short, if an end user has any bit of feedback, with the click of a button, they can quickly submit a ticket, and that goes directly to the support of the operator. And I can't even tell you how many times we have diverted an issue. We've got there faster. We've been able to solve a problem before it even became a problem. Times where the HR manager or the office facilities manager didn't even know anything happened because we got something fixed before they even found out about it. So that's like actually added a ton of value on just boosting customer satisfaction. And we've all been in that position when, like, if something's going wrong, it's actually okay. Like, as long as when I reach out, I get a response and they tell me, like, hey, we're working on that. Like, I'm always cool with that. Most people are. It's when you go, hours and days without getting a response, then obviously, like, they just lose interest and, like, this stinks, this is horrible, and they get really upset. So we've just been able to create a direct,
Hey, MJ, I don't want to cut you off, but being an operator, being your customer, just to have a real live experience now, I mean, all the operators on the line, I mean, drivers are drivers. I mean, drivers are going to make mistakes. It was 2 weeks ago when, just talking about JP Morgan Chase, there's 5 buildings with 48,000 employees. That's 5 general managers at each location. They're not my customer anymore. The 4,500 customers on the app are my customer now. That might sound a little overwhelming, but like you said, MJ, you get to put out a fire before the client finds out. Every client out there is not on our payroll. They don't want to deal with our problems. So I'm getting to the problem a lot quicker, like the next day, and finding out that consumer's unhappy, priceless on so many different levels. But going back to the route driver and common mistakes, I mean, just because there's less work to do, yeah, drivers take advantage sometimes. They might have left a Chobani yogurt in there that was a day old, like last month. We got a consumer that was pissed off, and they communicated to us. I got the message directly to my email saying that I bought an expired yogurt by 1 day. I'm pissed off. I'm not happy. It was a Monday. It was a rainy Monday for the customer. He was going to end up blowing this up to the client. So what did we do? Very simply, we got back to him in 30 seconds saying, hey, Jim, I apologize for the inconvenience. There was an oversight from the driver, and here's your Yoke cash. We sent them $2.69 right back to their app right away, and that fire was put to bed, and it didn't get escalated, Mike. So I just wanted to show an example of like real life scenario that I went through.
And that's great. I think that's a prime example of really how you're able to leverage digital to have direct communication between the end user and the vendor, and they're able to even bypass building management, their GM, their HR. So as you said, MC, they don't even know that it's an issue. They're able to go straight to you. You're able to resolve it in 30 seconds or less.
And then, but just another cool thing was you can actually see if it's a duplicate, if it's the same customer complaining about a different scenario. One day they get expired food, and another day my driver is 30 minutes late to put in their kind bar that's empty. I mean, that consumer reached out to us again and said, hey guys, what's going on? Where's the kind bar? It's empty. What we did a couple of times was we actually, because the kind bar wasn't there, and now it's about keeping that customer happy so that they don't delete the Yoke app, we actually sent that customer free of charge saying, hey, I apologize for that. Here's a credit to your Yoke Cash. When that kind bar does come in, use the Yoke Cash. You just bought yourself a free product. So once in a while, because you have all this extra monies and you're not tied up with all these other costs, once in a while doing the right thing like that goes a long way. So
you're able to be proactive to the customers and be immediately reactive to any of their issues. So
absolutely.
So guys, just for time, I'm going to push a little bit ahead to our cutting cost aspect of this. I'm just going to briefly go over some of the things that we've covered thus far on this so we can have a Q&A session for people on the call later. So a way that you guys are able to boost profits is what we just covered over the last couple of minutes. As MC has said on this, you're able to cut your costs by integrating with a management software, making it easy for your drivers to be trained and a seamless integration into your system. You're able to service your sections individually. The way that Seat software was set up is that we treat your micro market like a bank of vending machines. Goes back to point one, you don't have to retrain your drivers because they're using the same application, the same processes that they've used over time. Just embrace micro markets in general. So full integration with the whole suite of micro market providers, from the ones that offer you an iPad solution like Yoke to ones that do have huge kiosks that you can use. You're able to also partner with suppliers, as MC had mentioned before. You're able to do direct promotions with those suppliers. And a big thing that we did kind of gloss over is the ability to stop handling cash. MC talked about how they're able to cut costs by not having to deal with coin mechs and bill jams, but the cost of cash is astronomical, as we all know in the vending industry. And Mike, if you just want to give us a quick kind of story about how you guys got to stop handling cash and how that was beneficial for your business, and then we're going to move on to a Q&A after that.
Yeah, I mean, really quick, you know that drivers out there, I'm sure operators have dealt with this. You hire a driver that's an innocent, kind man, and all of a sudden that same driver is turned into a thief. Once cash is presented to a driver, drivers have sticky fingers once in a while, and catching that is something that you put a lot of time and effort into. So not dealing with cash from a driver standpoint is awesome because you keep that driver honest. And then he gets to, you're pretty much saving that employee's job without even really knowing. But another thing, it costs money to count money. I mean, we have 6 people in our money room count money all day. Ideally, even putting credit card readers on vending machines or putting out 1,000 Yoke markets. Counting money costs money. And if I can save $40,000 with one extra less employee, I mean, that's awesome for us. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there of it costs money to count money, right? And there's a lot of different levels of where cash is king, but in this situation, cash is not always king, right?
Yep. Removing cash from the equation takes away the temptation for drivers to have any thefts, as well as just makes your money room cheaper. You guys, ancillary costs from going to the bank fees, et cetera, et cetera. You're able to cut all of that down with a cashless only solution.
Absolutely.
So just quickly, some of the key takeaways that we saw, or we've learned so far from this webinar. The number of employees is not the only metric of whether a micro market can be successful. Mike, as you've spoken to on this, You can go as low as 40 employees to really make it work. To open locations with fewer employees, focus on lower cost micro market options. I think you've spoken greatly to that, about how you don't need to have fancy cabinets or coolers or $15,000 kiosks. There is great solutions like Yoke out there that you can enter in for a lower cost and still provide the same quality service. And lastly, using software integration can help you boost revenue, cut costs, and open new locations faster. You've stated that it's easy training for your drivers to move over. It's easy for your whole book of business, and you can easily convert either a new location to a new micro market, as well as converting a vending market or a vending location over to market. So with that said, we'd like to take the last couple minutes, and we've gone over, just for any questions that people on the webinar may have, so we can answer it for you guys. Adrian, I'll let you take it away, or if you want to start fielding some questions, I'm sure MC and MJ are happy to answer them.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Ben. And thanks to all three of our presenters, Ben, MJ, and Mike, for leading the great presentation. So the first question I saw come in was for MJ. So how do you see micro market performance in non-metropolitan areas?
Yeah, I think we see similar metrics. The metropolitan area makes so much sense just because there is so many opportunities. Like you say, every floor of every building. Obviously, there are demographics. Things are different. You've got to know your territory, but all of these same concepts should apply. I still think you can get into a micro market for less than you can put in, a bank of vending machines, and you should see higher revenues from the market versus vending. So, we also have some things like Yoke Cash, a bunch of ways for people to load money up onto their account. We've got put it on my tab features. We've got loyalty cards where people can load up money onto those. So even though it is a completely, cashless digital payment solution, there are so many ways to take care of the demographic of people that are either unbanked or just don't have cards. So a lot of ways around it. And I think if you can just be proactive and show the location, like, look, this isn't going to be an issue, they get over the cash problem pretty quickly. And then you can be, reaping all of these benefits that we covered today.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, MJ. So one question that actually got asked by a few different people, which is around theft. So how do you guys deal with theft? I know micro markets are in that open environment. So what are some of the controls you guys put in place to limit shrinkage and theft? This could probably go towards MC or MJ.
Yeah, so our drivers, look, you have to have a clear communication with your customers. Again, you're bringing innovation and uplift in culture to each pantry that you put markets in. I would say 90% of our locations, right out the gate, they're aware that theft, look, if it's 2% because of all the savings, it is what it is. If it's over 3%, that theft is charged back to the client. Does it happen? To totally be transparent with you, we haven't seen a ton of theft. Yes, there's some locations that you put in that you see a little bit more than you want, but please put in consideration all the other costs that you don't have to deal with anymore. But I'm definitely getting that customer on board, that if there's a shrinkage that we can't withstand, that they definitely need to get the hit for that. They need to take the hit for that. And we haven't really had any objections with any of our customers about that as of yet.
Awesome, great answer. And this actually feeds into another question that we. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, MJ.
I was going to say, MJ. I have a couple of thoughts on that real quickly. And I would encourage anybody who's listening today to reach out to me directly, and I will literally sit with you and build a pro forma that breaks down your vending location and then compare it to what it would be if it was a micro market. And it's just crystal clear you're going to have 30 to 40% boost in revenue when done properly, sometimes significantly higher. I personally, off the micro markets on some of these smaller locations, believe you're going to spend less in upfront costs on a cooler and a snack rack in one of our kiosks as opposed to 3 vending machines. And then even when you take into account monthly fees, credit card processing fees, maybe even a slightly higher cost of goods sold because you're selling higher ticket items, and even a 4% shrink, when you compare that to all of your costs on vending and the revenues you're going to see, I think in math, we can show you that it actually makes a way more sense to go with the micro market concept.
Awesome.
And also you're collecting sales tax on top of your advertised price, which also is a big benefit to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And this tying into like the next question too, I think this is probably for MC. You know, we talked about the importance of closed loop environments for micro markets for, you know, probably one of the main reasons is that shrinkage. Are there any types of closed loop environments that you would not consider putting a market in?
Not really. No, I mean, as long as it's a limited access location, I think there's opportunity to make money. I mean, was that the question, or is there any limited access locations where you would turn away?
Yeah, I think that was the question.
You spoke to this when you said you guys do kind of shift away from factories a little bit, but that's possibly just because of the area you're in. But yeah, the question is, would you ever not go to somewhere that's a limited access location, or is there any ones that you steer clear of?
You know what? As long as the communication is clear with the customer and you have a gut feeling that because it's in a limited access warehouse setting, as long as they're clear that we might have to result in putting vending back in, I think there's always an opportunity to start with the market. And then, I mean, as long as that communication is clear with the customer. I don't think you should really back down on any limited access locations as long as the communication is clear with the customer that you might have to result in another solution if this doesn't work out.
Gotcha. All right, so next question from earlier on in the presentation, also for MC. Are the 2 FT employees merchandising for just your micro markets or for vending as well?
So yeah, so we have 2 employees that merchandise now. One of the employees that goes around and has a route schedule, going around and signing employees up. That gentleman also takes the responsibility of merchandising solely the markets. He's in charge of merchandising the markets, and then we have another employee that solely merchandises the vending.
And how are those merchandising you say are different? Because this is more of a question for myself. Like, what are you taking into account in your merchandising from the micro markets versus vending? Is this more towards the higher ticket items in markets, or are there any other things that you consider when changing the merchandising?
No, you know what? I mean, that's pretty much the only change. You have to kind of change your mentality a little bit when you're merchandising. You definitely want all your high-end ticket items, probably eye level. But yeah, I mean, you're merchandising the same way. You're pretty much using the analytics the same way of just maximizing the trends and what's really selling at that location. So I don't really think there's a difference. One, you're using higher end items, and the other you're not. But I think in concept, it's all the same, I would say. Because I don't want to overcomplicate the situation for my employees as well. Just I consider it the same to a certain extent.
Got it. And so another question coming in, I think, sort of similar vein. So it's more of a question around the decision at the larger locations, you know, the 2,000 person locations, between having a micro market and potentially having a full cafe with hot foods. Do you ever make the decision at a location where it's large enough, you're proposing, hey, can we come in and have a more full line cafe style service you're providing? Or like, what's your decision making process when considering that versus either more micro markets or larger micro markets?
By putting a market on the same level of a cafe, you said, or just treating it like it is a cafe?
I think it's more of a decision. Like, do you ever have like a location that's large enough where you guys provide, say like, hey, we'll be the cafe for your guys' office or for your guys' location, as opposed to having a standalone market?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So for 5 Manhattan West, the J.P. Morgan Chase Technology Building in the Hudson Yards, there's really nothing around there. So we actually have a bank. Each floor has around 1,500 to 2,000 employees. I know it seems crazy, but these floors are monstrous, and there's really nothing to eat around there. So putting high-end fresh food and setting it up like a cafe was the vision from the global client. So that's what we gear to. And as of right now, to date, we've been in there for 5 months. It's been super successful selling that fresh food and treating that location as a cafe.
Got it. Understood. So I guess last question here, because I know we're running over on time because we've had a lot of great things to talk about. So this is for MJ. How do you see your technology, micro-market technology, changing in the next few years? Like, what's the future vision looking for micro-market?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just important to continue to innovate and to continue to integrate. We understand, and it's been in our DNA since day one, is that people and companies and business owners have systems that they're using already that they either can't get away from or really like. And so we want to play nice with all of those platforms. So that's huge. Another immediate step for us is loyalty and rewards and promos and coupons. And we just want to continue to drive that forward. We're doing some really neat things with loyalty rewards programs, put it on my tab features where we give people credit and they can just spend, and then we divvy up at the end of the month. But we really want to start building out promotions within, promoting specific products, bundle and saves, buy 4, get the 5th, all those types of things that really start to drive consumer behavior. And then I want to say this too, like, we think we're really smart guys and know what we're doing and have great ideas. But I think one of the biggest reasons we've been successful in a short period of time in this industry is because we've listened to our customers. And I can't tell you how many features that we've designed have come directly from somebody like MC or one of our other customers who are out in the field doing it every day. And we're just extremely open to listening and saying, you know what, that's a really great idea, and here's how we can make that a really rock star feature. I literally just got an email from one of our customers, a feature that we just released where if somebody scans a product and it doesn't get a good scan, they can't recognize the product, which would mean that it might be labeled wrong in the inventory management platform. We're now sending that notification immediately as soon as there's a bad scan directly to the customer. That was something that we didn't think of, but that one of our customers said, hey, it'd be really cool if it did this, and boom, 2 weeks later, we had implemented that feature. So again, I just think just listening to our customers and learning as much as we can and really, taking that to heart and driving the product forward.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
MJ, why don't you give that example when J.P. Morgan Chase called you up and told you to drop your pants because they need a solution right away for a survey. You turned it around in probably 3 days.
Yeah, more or less, JP, the client, wanted to start getting qualitative feedback on the operation. Are you happy with the pantry service? Are you happy with the micro market? Are you happy with the vending? And, they came to us and were like, hey, could you put this into your technology? Could you have the kiosk prompt, for a survey? And we were open to that, but we came back to them and said, guys, look, the kiosk should be meant for checking people out. The last thing we want is somebody hanging out for an extra 15 seconds after they've bought something and creating long lines and cutting into sales. But a really awesome place to put that survey would be on the receipt that we email to people. So how about on every time somebody gets emailed a receipt, we put a link in there. Hey, got 1 minute to answer 3 questions. And boom, now they're collecting qualitative feedback And we turned that around really quickly. And that's kind of, just like I said, always been our DNA. We are not the new kids on the block anymore. We're not making it up as we go along. We've got a really nice book of business, but we're still young and hungry and listening to our customers, and know that if we don't continue to innovate, that we'll be left in the dust.
I think that's a great way to look at it, and I also think that's a good place to end it right there. Hey, to both our presenters and our hosts, big thank you again for presenting. We really appreciate you guys taking the time and talking through your experiences and providing some great information. To everybody listening, another huge thank you to you for tuning in. I know there's some questions that we didn't get a chance to get to just based on time. We'll be reaching out to you guys over email to try to get you an answers to that. And if anybody on the line, thinks of a question in 2 minutes as soon as we log off and like to get an answer, feel free to shoot us an email and we'll pass those along to the speakers to go get those answered for you. So in case also anybody is interested in watching a replay or potentially sending the webinar along to somebody that they think might be interested, just keep an eye on your inbox in the next 2 days, and we'll be sending that out to you guys. So again, until next time, have a great rest of your week. Again, thank you to our speakers, and I hope to see you guys all again next time on our next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
This is MC. Thank you very much for including me, and I definitely appreciate being involved with the webinar today. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.